Okay, to get started, do you mind saying your name, major, and year in school?
My name is Claire Harper. I am a Spanish education major. I'm a freshman this year, and I'm from Plainfield, Indiana.
And what brought you to this class?
I chose to take this class because having a class about race and racism after the uprisings this summer just really interested me, and it made me want to learn more because I feel like I was very uneducated before about race.
What was your hometown before you came to college?
I have lived in two towns in my life, and both of them, they're right next to each other, very predominantly white, very conservative towns. There were a handful of minorities in my elementary school, and I guess it just, I don't know, nothing was ever talked about to me in my home because I was pretty much just around white kids, so I never had too much experience with race. And then in middle school, I transferred to a bigger town, a slightly more diverse town, but still pretty white. Um, so I guess I noticed different ethnicities in my new school, but still not something I really thought about too much or looked into really.
Okay, so you didn't really have much experience with diversity growing up.
No, I wouldn't say so. Like I had, probably one she's mixed, black and white. She was my friend in elementary school, still is now. She goes to Ball State as well, but I never thought anything about it.
Okay. So with not really having very many people of color in your communities, did you really ever see racism or experience it?
I probably would hear, racial slurs on the bus and things like that. I'm sure I did. I heard everything on the bus, but I don't think it ever clicked in my head what those meant. So I guess I never, like, my parents never like sat down and like talked to me about race. I feel like it was just kind of in my house expected that we were going to be kind to everyone and we didn't treat anyone differently. So that was just how I acted towards people that I met, regardless of what they looked like. But I don't remember any instances, before college and maybe late high school where I ever truly saw any race conversations or any racism in front of me.
And when you came to college, do you feel like this changed for you?
I definitely feel like it did. And one of my really good friends, we were friends in high school, and then he goes here now, and he's mixed. And so I feel like just from talking to him, he tells me like this summer he plays football at Ball State, so he was here in the summer, and he would have people say stuff to him. He'd hear racial slurs, and he like, I don't know if it's just because he doesn't talk to me about it or what, but he seems kind of unbothered by it because he's a very confident person. So um but just knowing that that really happened, like, I guess in my head I always thought, college was just a more accepting place, like people were free to be who they wanted. And so hearing him tell me that before I even got to campus was just kind of a little eye-opening to me, a little disappointing too, because it's just 100% not what I would have expected, but I guess it's just the world we live in.
Mhm. So, with both of you being in college and being in the same college, do you feel like, how do you feel your experience with college in general differs from his? Do you feel like there's a great difference in the level of how people accept you and things like that?
I don't know if accepting would be the right word for me. I feel like maybe it's just like, because I know from him, he feels like when he's walking with a group of Black people, people turn and look. Like, people look at a group of Black boys walking, but if I'm walking with any white person, no one thinks twice about it. Like, no one's gonna look at me and be like, what are all those white people doing together? Like, they're up to something, you know, like, but for him, I know he feels a little uncomfortable, and he's fully aware of what people will think, like walking into any public space with several Black people, you know, he's kind of on high alert, which is just sad, but that's his mindset. And so I like, because I know I never have to worry or like be afraid of something because I'm white, versus him, like during when after the election, when all the Trump trucks were going through, he didn't walk on campus at night because he was scared to, and he didn't want any of them to say anything to him, and I felt safe still. I didn't think anyone was going to question me or say anything to me.
Wow. All right. With everything going on in 2020, even before this class started, do you feel like that changed how you looked at the world or how you saw race in general?
I definitely think it did, because I think, you know, growing up with not seeing much people of color, so just seeing whiteness, I never thought about how people of color were treated. Never really knew systematic racism was a thing, I guess. I never learned about it. So during the Black Lives Matter movement, when it really picked up in, you know, May, June, after George Floyd's death, I started doing some more research and looking into the things that were being said and seeing how, you know, most of them were true. And it was sad because it made me mad that I didn't know about it, that no one talked about it. And so I guess it just made me want to educate myself more, which is part of, you know, why I ended up here in this class.
Okay. So you did research before this class, even before, you know, signing up for it.
Yeah, just like little things here and there, like some of the like incidences that were happening with police brutality, I kind of like read up on those and kind of saw what went down, because when George Floyd died, I didn't know what happened exactly, you know, like you just see things, you see pictures and tweets, whatever. So I was like, okay, what actually happened? So I kind of started doing that with like when Breonna Taylor, the same thing, like I would figure things out myself and make sure I truly knew, like to the best of my ability, what happened, and I wasn't just listening to other people, which I feel like kind of helped me. And like not even just like with the Black Lives Matter movement, with like especially with the election year and stuff, it just all around helped me to not believe everything I see on social media, and to just make sure I have an idea of what I'm talking about when I like agree or disagree with like if I like a tweet, I want to know why I liked it and like know what I'm talking about, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you feel like doing this research before you came into class, do you feel like it helped you with how you participated in discussion or what you added to it?
I feel like I was more confident when talking in class, because, you know, not especially with this class, you know, being online, it's intimidating to talk, and if you say something wrong, you feel kind of stupid. So I felt like it helped me trust what I was saying. When we would have units where we talked about like the past with racism and like where it all stemmed from, I didn't talk much then because I didn't know much about it. But when we would talk about current events, I was definitely able to participate in discussion.
The readings we did any of them really influence you or impact the way you thought about race?
Yes, when we did, what was it? We watched, what is the word? Why can I not think of it? Like when someone says something racist, there's a term for it, but it's like, oh, and we talked about like how that affects education and teachers. What was that word unit we did? It was like, I can't think of the word. Now it's bothering me because we've said it a million times since we learned it. Like when someone says something racist, but it's obvious that they didn't mean it. What is that word? Do you remember? Do you know what I'm talking
Microaggression?
about? Yes, yes, a microaggression. Okay, so that unit, definitely stuck out to me because we watched a video about how teachers deal with it in the classroom. And when I've wanted to be a teacher honestly for as long as I can remember, and so I guess I never really thought, because I never saw teachers have to deal with it, like how you would deal with that in a classroom. So seeing that helped me realize that I'm not necessarily, going to teach at a predominantly white school. So if I'm in a diverse school, I need to know how to deal with, racial slurs and microaggression. Like, I need to be able to deal with that in the responsible way. So I loved that unit because it just kind of helped me to realize what I'll be dealing with in the future and know how to do it properly.
And do you think that this class added to your understanding of racism and white supremacy?
Yeah, definitely, especially at the beginning when we really started with what racism even means and what race is, and seeing that it was just all this white people doing whatever they could to benefit themselves. It's disappointing, being a white person. It's like, why did you guys have to do that? Like, thinking of how different our world could be now if some white settlers didn't decide that race was this, white people were better than, like they say, obviously white people are better than black people, bring in these slaves and act like there's a difference. Like, if they just didn't think like that, how different everything would look now, and how differently we would talk about race. So it just makes me kind of sad to just see it unfold in our country's history. It's just disappointing.
If you could enact the changes that you wanted to see in our society, what changes would you want? What would you change?
I guess I feel like it's hard to pinpoint things. Obviously a lot of things need changing, and I feel like I would maybe start with the effects of redlining and the quote ghettos, and how Black people live in the inner city and poorly cared for areas, and they go to schools that have less funding. That would probably be my first move, is to get better funding for those schools. But the hard part of that is attempting to not raise the taxes there for the families that can't afford it, because it's not fair that just because their children are getting educated as they should be, as the schools around their area, that they have to pay more to meet normalcy. So I feel like that would be, if I could change one thing, that would be the first thing I tried to change, is to better the schools in the inner cities where it's predominantly Black or any other minority.
Yeah, agreed. So narrowing that in a little bit more, what changes would you like to see in Ball State? Or that you wish had been done differently from the beginning?
I guess I feel like I'm kind of the same as you on, I haven't ever seen something, and my friend that I was talking about earlier in this interview, the stuff he hears isn't from Ball State students, it's from people in Muncie, adults. So with that being said, I haven't, like you said, you had heard things about how Ball State does it poorly. I just haven't heard anything, good or bad. So I feel like it's hard for me to say how Ball State can change when I don't necessarily know fully what's going on. So I guess just kind of based off what I had heard from you, I guess just attempting to become a more accepting school, educating professors and students on what it means, to be racist, what is racist, what is not racist, how to be an anti-racist. I think the class we were in should probably be required for everyone. It should be part of the core curriculum.
So it sounds like you've experienced racism more on a personal level, but through your friend, not really.
Yes.
Okay. Have you experienced microaggressions, ones that you can give examples of?
Any microaggression I have face would be towards my gender, you know, like the things you hear when you're growing up, like you hit like a girl, you run like a girl, you know, girls can't do this, girls can't do that, things like that. Is probably all I've truly heard. And then, you know, I'm sure there's just been so many unnoticed because I didn't know what it was towards people of minorities that I never caught on to. But from my personal experience towards me, I've heard things like the ones I just gave the examples of.
Mm-hmm. And growing up, I'm assuming that a lot of these things you heard growing up, do you feel like that experience of microaggressions towards you for being a girl kind of in any way influence how you feel about microaggressions towards people of color now?
Yes, because when you hear them as a girl, and you know, even like I said, I didn't know exactly what that word was. I didn't know what a microaggression was. So, but still hearing it, you're like, how are you? In my head, it was always, how can you compare me to everyone else? When people, you know, and it's the same, people do it towards men too, you know, with like the basic stereotypes of like men shouldn't cry and show emotion, like, and so I feel like it just shows me in my head, like I think of it as you can't put everyone in the same category just because of their gender or their race. Like it's ridiculous to assume everyone would be the same just because of how they look.
Yeah, agreed. Um, so has your personal perspective on racism in institutions changed throughout the semester?
Yeah, I would definitely say it has, because just seeing, you know, with the resources that we were able to watch and read in class, it's just made me all around more aware of what our country's really like. You know, it helps me to get out of, you know, my small town and see the bigger picture of things. Um, yeah, that's my answer for that one.
What about your understanding of white privilege? Did you really understand it before this class?
I feel like I did just like during the Black Lives Matter movement, when it was real heavy earlier this year. That's probably more when I started to understand white privilege, and then this class just heightened my understanding. Because I guess I mean, I feel like I'm being repetitive, but it's just, you know, I didn't ever think of white privilege just because everyone was just as privileged as me growing up, you know? So now during this year, being able to see what it truly means to be white and privileged has just, I guess it also just makes me more, I guess, grateful that I am in the situation I'm in, and I don't ever have to fight harder for something because of the color of my skin. So yeah, it just makes me thankful that I am benefiting from it, but then it also makes me upset that it's that way in general. You know what I mean? Like the fact that I don't have to worry and someone else does makes me sad.
Mm-hmm. And how do you think you've been affected personally by, if not really experiencing racism, by witnessing racism in our society?
I guess because of the things, like all the things I've heard of racism are from my friends of color. Hearing how it affects them and makes them upset just makes me more willing to stop it when I see it, and use the voice I do have to tell people and educate people on what they're doing, and just how it affects the people around them.
Okay. And so do you feel like this has helped you become more? Give me 1 second. Okay, do you feel like having the experiences you've had has helped you become more anti-racist?
Yeah, I would say so. Just because seeing it on a personal level makes it a lot more real. Like, I feel like if I would just hear things, it wouldn't mean as much to me to say something when I see something, but because I have seen how it affects people, it makes me want to speak up more.
And it sounds like you've seen quite a bit of discrimination on campus. Have you seen any discrimination by, well, I guess, have you heard any discrimination involving administration or faculty at Ball State? Or even just,
Not personally, because I wasn't a student last year when that incident happened with the professor calling the cops, but I did hear about it because my brother still went to Ball State. So, sorry, can you repeat the question? I just kind of lost my train of thought.
have you seen any discrimination within the faculty or administration at Ball State?
Okay, so no, personally I haven't, but I've just heard stories from people.
Okay. Hmm. So before we conclude this interview, is there anything else that you would like to add?
I guess just that I am glad I took this class, and it was definitely very educational, and I would recommend it to anyone that is considering it.
Thank you so much for your time.